My story begins with an unlikely prophecy. A few days after I was born, an old man proclaimed to my parents, "This child will be great." And I've had to shoulder that lofty expectation all my life. First for my parents, then for my country, and now for the next generation of leaders. My childhood started out as a privileged one. My parents were both of indigenous roots, but my father held an elite position as the legislature's first Native member. My siblings and I lived in the city, attended school there, and would spend our summers in my family's village with our mother and grandmother. We spent our vacation enjoying nature, practicing traditional farming, swimming, fishing in the nearby stream, picking wild fruits and flowers. Our father became ill early on and passed away by the time I was 7, leaving my mother to care for 4 children, a teacher and a preacher. Our mother became an anchor for all of us. I watched as she embraced hard work with a singular focus to see us succeed. She instilled humility, honesty, and determination to ensure that we knew the value of what it takes to make life. Today, I firmly believe that I am where I am and can continue the hard work ahead because of the lessons and the values she instilled in me. I graduated high school and married at 17 years old. I dedicated the next decade of my life to my husband. I bore 4 sons in 3 years and watched my former peers advance in school and their careers. Meanwhile, my marriage was turbulent at best, and I experienced domestic violence. In 1961, my husband was granted an opportunity to study in the United States, which afforded me the chance to nurture the same dream. After a decade and 4 children of being out of school, I approached this incredible opportunity with the same determination to succeed that I had once seen in my own mother. And I went on to earn an accounting degree from the Madison Business College in Wisconsin. Sometimes strength comes in different ways. When I landed in Madison in the winter, and prior to that, I had never been on an airplane. The cold, terrible cold. My only response was to cry, and the cry freeze. To go to school required the breathtaking decision of leaving our children at home, the youngest one being 1 year old. We were able to do so by the established tradition of an extended family system where grandmothers helped with taking care of children to enable their children to have the opportunity of studying. On return home, I dedicated my time to becoming a good professional, leading to stress in marriage. I was ever mindful, however, that our country required change, deserved better. My family experience made this so. My political activism was ignited early at home when an eminent female jurist and a courageous judge led a street march demanding freedom for civic protests and greater independence for judges in the courts. Their passion and determination inspired me to action and made it difficult for me to continue to do business as usual. I found it difficult to stay on the sidelines as I watched the political tide that was sweeping Liberia at that time. This tide would eventually become a storm, washing away the progress of the past and the potential of the future. Again, in a commencement address to my high school alma mater, I called for less government control of the economy and pleaded for a return to democracy. I was taken to a cabinet meeting and threatened with a jail term. My escape was the opportunity to go to the United States for further training at Harvard. Subsequently, I completed a certificate course at the Economics Institute of the University of Colorado at Boulder in advance of my master's degree from Harvard. I worked part-time during this period. I did what I could to make ends meet, and I learned what it meant to go without basic necessities. The hardships I experienced made me more prepared for life at home and gave me a greater appreciation for the struggles and resilience of the poor. While at Harvard, I witnessed the heights of protest against the Vietnam War. I saw the passion and fire on all sides of the debate. My activism zeal was enhanced. I returned home, served in government, and enjoyed a rapid ascent as a civil servant. I found it hard, however, to stay on the sidelines as I watched the political tide that was sweeping Liberia at that time. It was during this time that I learned, as Secretary Albright has stated, that women have to be active listeners and interrupters. But when you interrupt, you have to know what you are talking about. Believe me, I interrupted. I refuse to keep silent about the inequalities in policies, practices, and the corruption that plagued our government. As a junior official from the then Department of Treasury, I represented that office at a development conference at the University of Liberia, sponsored by Harvard. I used all that I could to describe why change was necessary, and I was threatened with dismissal. I had become galvanized in my resolve to steer a better course for our country and right the wrongs of the past. I rose up with fellow compatriots at home and in the diaspora, speaking truth to power, as I sped down a path that would land me in prison twice and force me to flee my country. Yes, the path of resistance is turbulent, arduous, and perilous by nature. It sometimes requires unimaginable sacrifice from those on the march. For women and mothers, the path of resistance often demands even more. I spent the 80s and 90s in exile abroad and pursued a professional career, building upon what was achieved when I was at the World Bank several years before. Most notably, in that period, at Citibank Nairobi, as the first African woman vice president, subsequently at the United Nations, where I helped other countries advance development and economic reforms. My international work gave me a new platform to raise global awareness to the need for change, to the culture of the lack of integrity, to violence and impunity, which was part of the Liberian culture. Recalling the old man's prophecy, I returned to Liberia and attempted to interrupt the violence, the utter lack of respect for human life. I challenged the status quo. I challenged all of those in absolute power. I challenged my fellow compatriots to see beyond the barrel of a gun and dream of a better future. And this time, I challenge myself to put everything on the line to try to bring lasting change. I ran for the presidency in 1997, and I lost. But I underestimated the impact of a decade of violence. I underestimated the power of corruption and lawlessness at the time. Most importantly, I underestimated the power of a dream, the power of the collective dream of Liberian mothers. Secretary Clinton has stated that women are the largest untapped reservoir of talent in the world. That was very true in Liberia. The women of Liberia are mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, and grandmothers. For 14 years, bear the brunt of violence. They carried the true and brutal cost of war. And together, they nurtured the collective dream of a peaceful Liberia. In 2005, the women of Liberia played a pivotal role in electing me to be the first woman president of Liberia, which also, as has been mentioned, made me the first democratically elected female president in Africa. I carry this honor in full acknowledgement of the sacrifices of the women of Liberia, of the sacrifices of African women, of the sacrifices of girls all over our continent. It's through them that this dream is realized, and they belong to have the dividend from that dream. Together, we inherited a war-torn country which faced total economic collapse, destroyed infrastructure, dysfunctional institutions, a staggering external debt, and a bloated civil service, and social culture shaped by decades of desperation, violence, and dependency. But there has been indisputable progress. In January, I handed over a country firmly rooted in democratic ideals, imbued with basic freedoms, an open society, and the economic and political empowerment of women. Our economy went from ground zero to achieving a growth rate of up to 9% at its peak, before global externalities made a big difference. We had introduced running water and electricity for the first time in years. We had ensured that girls had a right, women had a right to find their voice. And most importantly, Liberians could share a realized collective dream of peace and prosperity for our country. Despite all of the challenges inherent in the loss of gains as a result of those conditions, including decline in global commodity prices and that terrifying Ebola virus, we were able to set the country on the road to recovery by building a strong foundation. Under my leadership, in 12 consecutive years of peace, following 4 consecutive years of conflict, Liberians chose the power of the ballot over the power of the bullet. This is the shared legacy of my administration and all the supporters of a stable and prosperous Liberia. For all of this, I'm proud to have been awarded the United States Medal of Freedom, the Nobel Peace Prize, the Indira Gandhi Prize, and just a few weeks ago, as mentioned, the Mo Ibrahim Prize for African Leadership.